Scenes from Perfect, St. Elmo's Fire, and Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Now, what do these three very different films have in common? I think they're three of the worst major films of 1985, which is the subject of this special edition of At the Movies, the movie review program. I'm Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. And that's right, it's time again for another look at the movies you really hated last year, the worst movies of 1985. And just a quick reminder about our ground rules. By and large, we try to limit this annual selection to the major bad movies. It'd be real easy to pick out obscure kung fu epics or cheap teenage sex comedies, but we're more interested in the more ambitious movies, the ones that really shot for the stars and failed miserably, the bigger budget bombs. And Gene starts with a multi-million-dollar special effects extravaganza that was inspired by one of the best movies of all time and was a complete disaster.
That's about all I was going to say about it. You know, a bad adult film is one thing, but somehow a bad children's film is even worse. Admit it. Because you sit there, even if you're a critic paid to sit there, you sit there thinking, what am I doing with my life watching this picture? And Return to Oz was such a lousy film that I'll always resent that it stole 2 hours of my life. When I'm dying, I want you to know, if you're at my funeral, I want you to know I'll be there thinking, I could have lived 2 hours longer, or happier.
I'll say a few words over your grave. He would have had 2 hours more happiness if it hadn't been for Return to Oz.
Thank you very much. This was supposed to be the film that was more true to the Oz books. But they made changes from the book it was based on, and they still made a trashy picture, a trashy-looking film with none of the joys of the classic Judy Garland Oz film. Here's a scene from Return to Oz with little Dorothy being threatened by an evil princess.
I'm Dorothy Gale.
Dorothy Gale.
What's happened to the scarecrow?
Come nearer to me. A gnome king took the scarecrow and all the emeralds back to his mountain and turned everyone else to stone. I believe I'll lock you in the tower for a few years till your head is ready, and then I'll take it.
I believe you will not.
Dorothy. Do not worry. I will save you.
Now let's see, who did you see in that scene? You saw the little girl, you saw the princess, and you saw the rip-off robot from Star Wars, and you saw a hen. Well, you know what I liked most about the picture? The hen. I've said this before, I'll say it again. You know you're in trouble when your favorite character in a movie is a hen that only has a bit part.
This movie was amazing. It starts out with Dorothy being left overnight at the house of a strange
Unbelievable.
surgeon. Then she's given shock treatments. Then she's swept away in a flood. By the time the movie is half an hour old, the kids in the audience are probably scared to death. It was not an upbeat children's film.
Absolutely wrong, and I was so glad that the audience rejected it. Unfortunately, I had to see it first.
Now let's move on to our next thinker of the year, which is Godzilla 1985. And that title may make it sound like I've already violated our guidelines, because it sounds like a low-budget grade B exploitation movie, but actually this was a big-budget grade B exploitation movie. It cost a lot of money. It starred Godzilla, the most popular movie monster since King Kong, in a special effect extravaganza in which he once again wipes out Tokyo. Godzilla's co-star here is Raymond Burr, the only other survivor from the original 1956 movie.
Colonel, tell the Japanese we'll give them all the support they need. No, there has to be a more effective way. Troops, aircraft, rockets, they were all used before. All they'll do is confuse and antagonize him further. He's looking for something, searching. If only we could figure out what it is. before it's too late.
I almost thought he was going to forget the line before it's too late. That had to be in there. The funny thing about the Raymond Burr performance is that it looked like he shot all of his scenes on the same day. I mean, you saw that scene. He steps forward, he utters his same pretentious warning, "That will never stop Godzilla." And then they cut to Godzilla eating skyscrapers. This movie was real bad.
It was real bad. I still think it had to be low budget because what does Godzilla get paid, number one? And two, what does Raymond Burr get paid?
Well, actually, though, Godzilla probably cost a lot because of all those special effects. And also, think of all the different Godzillas they had to make because he's infinitely variable in size. When they need a Godzilla whose foot is only big enough to crush a car, then Godzilla has a foot that looks about 8 feet long. Later on, he's 60 stories high, and his foot must be 3 blocks long. So there's absolutely no consistency in Godzilla's size.
What they should have done, I think, is make a parody of Godzilla. But Toho Studios, I mean, they weren't going to fool around or make him scary. But I think
it's a horrible suspicion that maybe they thought this was a parody.
No, I have a horrible suspicion that they didn't think it was a parody and didn't want it to be a parody because they think Godzilla is too precious to be parodied. Coming up next at the movies, the yuppies we hated most in 1985. That's more worse. Think about it.
What did you tell her? What did you tell her?
He told me nothing.
Our next title on the list of the year's worst movies was a fairly big success at the box office, maybe because of all the top young stars it brought together. The movie was named St. Elmo's Fire, and it was sort of a big chill for recent college graduates, telling the story of a group of young Georgetown University students who drink, drug, and party their way through the first year of civilian life. Here's a typical scene, Rob Lowe on a collision course with self-destruction.
Hey, okay, you're under arrest. Watch the sack. Do you believe in premarital sex? May I assume the accident left you injury-free? Really? 4 months after graduation and you're still acting like every night's a frat party. Aren't you even a little bit concerned about Wendy? How bad is it?
Severe. She might have finally exceeded the limit on her father's visa.
But you're being arrested for drunk driving.
Drunk, definitely. I don't know if you can call it driving. You have the right to remain silent.
You okay?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Wayne.
We'll be right behind you.
St. Elmo's Fire was a roll call of talented young actors. In that scene alone, you could see Rob Lowe, Andrew McCarthy, Ali Sheedy, Mare Winningham, and Judd Nelson, and Emilio Estevez, and Demi Moore is also in this movie. All that talent wasted on a film that had nothing interesting to do with them or anything interesting to say about them. It was really sad to see them just acting stupid for 2 hours.
And it got me very angry. First of all, I don't think drunk driving jokes are funny at all. And you see they're laughing in the background and congratulating him in some way and not taking him seriously. That's really rotten. And that typifies the whole film. There's a lot of rotten behavior. And okay, if the movie were taking a condemnatory attitude toward the behavior in the film, then you say it's saying something about behavior right out of school. But the movie is congratulatory about this kid. It romances them, the music behind them, the way they parade around together.
I don't even ask that it condemn them, just that it be analytical or objective about them, because essentially this movie has the attitude that life is a treatable disease and that drinks and drugs are the medicine that you can use to treat it. And if you're wiped out, then you're okay. So it's got a very sick bottom line.
Well, but sick in the sense, Roger, that basically you walk out of thinking, wow, it's cool to be like these people. That's the point that the film makes.
Role models,
Okay, well, now we're in agreement. Our next film was a howling failure until its last scene. Then, in its last scene, it became socially outrageous. It's Richard Brooks's Fever Pitch, a laughable anti-gambling movie that turned into be a commercial for Las Vegas, as well as a statement that the best way to get rid of gambling problems, get this, make one more bet and hope you get lucky. That's real smart advice, huh? Here Ryan O'Neal plays a sports writer investigating gambling who gets hooked on gambling himself until he visits his loan shark bookie looking for more time and, of course, more money.
I sent for you? No. You came to me. You needed cash. You got it. $31,000 of my money. No collateral, no co-signers, no questions. Come payday, I'm the bad guy. Stop that, dummy. You guys, you hate my guts. So why you come to me? Because I'm your last hope. Why deliver? And I'm the bad guy.
Now, this would have been a bad movie if it had simply stuck to its original anti-gambling stance, because the gambling scenes in this picture are laughable, especially when he gets supplied by a hooker, by the owner of the hotel, you know, and it says MGM Grand right on it. I'm sure the hotel company really appreciated that scene. But when it pulls a switcheroo at the end of the film with a down-and-out Ryan O'Neal gambling alongside, get this, the leader of a local Gamblers Anonymous chapter and winning and getting back to even, Fever Pitch not only ruins a good night for us, but it really ruins the good name of Gamblers Anonymous. I just attacked the film for knocking drunk driving jokes, or having drunk driving jokes. Look what this does for gambling.
You know, Gene, after this movie came out, I called up the technical advisor on Fever Pitch, and I talked to him over the phone, and he was explaining to me, no, you don't understand. He only gambles enough to win back his losses, and then he's able to stop. So that shows progress.
What is that, in part 2 of the movie?
I'm thinking to myself, this is really amazing. It seems to me that only gambling enough to win back your losses is like only drinking enough to get over your hangover. It doesn't sound to me like a real long-term solution.
The film is a complete, utter cheat, and it's a bad movie even if it played it straight.
I think you're right. In fact, I know you're right.
Thank you.
Next at the movies on our review of the year's worst, Pee Wee Herman.
I hated our next film, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, from start to finish, and this is not a case of my not being a big fan of nerdball Pee-wee Herman. I am a big fan of Pee-wee Herman. I laugh every time I see him on the David Letterman show. I once tried and couldn't get into one of his sold-out concerts, and I went to this movie expecting to laugh my head off. I didn't think he was funny at all in the movie. I was shocked. Here's a typically dumb moment.
I meant to do that.
Did you notice that bad cut on how quickly he flipped off the end of the bike? For me, Pee-wee's juvenile humor, I guess, works best in 7-minute bits in the Letterman show. That's the only conclusion I can draw from my negative response to this movie that just didn't make it for me.
Well, I didn't see the movie. It came out while I was on vacation. When I came back, I didn't catch up with it. But oddly enough, Gene, on the basis of that clip, I'd like to see it. I thought it was kind of funny.
On the basis of that?
On the basis of that clip, I kind of liked it.
Let me just tell you something. On the basis of that, if you think that's funny, you're going to roar with this film because...
It kind of remind me of Harold Lloyd a little bit there.
Oh, my God, Roger. You're Harold Lloyd. Don't throw big, good names around.
I'll tell you what. I'll see the movie. I'll get back to you. Okay, let's move on to our next bad movie of 1985, which is The Bride, a big-budget Frankenstein movie that somehow completely missed the magic of the low-budget movies that inspired it. This was Jennifer Beals' first film since her big success in Flashdance, and what a disappointment as she plays the first woman created by Dr. Frankenstein. Here she is meeting her creator and the monster who was the doctor's first creation.
Take your filthy hands off me.
For me. Yes, she's for you. Yes. For me. For me. No. For me.
Don't be so impetuous.
For me. For me.
You fool! Imbecile!
I think the basic problem with The Bride was that it aimed too high. It was a very pretentious movie, slick and glossy and arty, when in fact all of the best Frankenstein movies have not been afraid to cheerfully admit that they're basically just gothic horror romances and sometimes romantic comedies.
I think the problem with this film is that this is one that tried to do very much, too much as you said. It had two stories, the Frankenstein and the creation, and the circus dwarf and the brutish guy and their little friendship, which was much more interesting than Frankenstein and the monster. That they should have focused on a love relationship. When you walk into this picture, you want to see Jennifer Beals in some kind of interesting thing with Sting, and they didn't have it. Well, there was no chemistry between the two of them at all.
In all the best Frankenstein movies, including Bride of Frankenstein, the relationship between the monster and innocence, you know, and showing his own innocence is always the best part of the movie.
Yeah. Coming up next at the movies, a laughable film called Perfect.
What's wrong with wanting to be the best that you can be? What is so wrong with wanting to be perfect?
Next on our survey of the worst movies of 1985, a major disappointment for John Travolta fans. The name of the movie is Perfect, and in it, Travolta plays a Rolling Stone reporter who's writing an expose of the Southern California health club scene when he falls in love with an aerobics instructor played by Jamie Lee Curtis. Here's the scene where she accuses him of violating the terms of their friendship.
7, hold down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here comes the
I didn't write it. You gotta believe me, please. Just let me explain, please. Leave her alone. Haven't you caused enough trouble already? Come on, keep going. Right down. Go. Then those knees free. Don't do this to me. Just
Don't leave me alone, Adam. Leave me alone.
Hey, Lawrence.
Ladies, I'm really sorry.
There's the reporter on the beat. There were so many things wrong with Perfect that Jamie Lee Curtis and a few of the supporting performances were about all that was right. The whole portrayal of magazine journalism was completely ridiculous. It was very distracting the way Travolta tried to develop a relationship with Curtis and then kept turning into a reporter and betraying that relationship. And the health club scenes themselves featured shameless TNA in the middle of an allegedly serious movie.
You know, I talked to Jamie Lee Curtis about this movie, and I told her I thought that the worst thing wrong with it was that her character wasn't the most interesting one in the movie. The one that any good journalist would be pursuing was the Lorraine Newman character, the single girls trying to find themselves through their bodies at the clubs, that kind of character. There were a couple running through the films. She said she originally wanted to play that role. And, you see, and so the movie's focus was off. He did bad reporting.
Even worse than that, because as a matter of fact, the Travolta character was totally unnecessary to the movie. The movie could have gone right into the health club scene and done it without having the whole character of the reporter.
In other words, do an urban cowboy where he is just part of the scene.
Yes, where the movie enters into the scene instead of observing it through his eyes.
That's not a bad idea. Gee, we can improve these things like that. Our next lousy major movie in 1985 was Arthur Penn's Target, a shocking disappointment from director Bonnie and Clyde and many other superb films. Target was a ridiculous thriller from start to finish about Matt Dillon's mother and Gene Hackman's wife being kidnapped while touring Paris.
Good. Thank you.
What's with Mom, huh? What's up?
That was Paris. Your mom's split from her tour. That was a guy from the American consul. Some kind of mix-up, but they're expecting him back in a couple of hours. I guess it must happen a lot. Tourists leave their groups 1,000 times a year. Come back a day later with perfume and sexy underwear. Cops have to check it out, that's all.
Tourists? We're not talking tourists here. We're talking about Mom. And I know you don't drink unless you're nervous.
Listen, your mother's going to rejoin her group this afternoon. I'm going to hear from the American consul. Relax.
How long has she been missing?
48 hours.
48 hours? Say it right, will you? That's 2 days.
Now, let me take a second and explain the film's big secret and how stupid its script really is. The big secret is that Gene Hackman, looking a little slow-witted there, a little bit of a buffoon to us and to his son, is really a CIA operative now retired. So he really swings into action when he gets to Paris. And now his son really admires him. He doesn't think Dad's a dumbo. And they grow closer together to save dear old Mom. But how can we seriously believe that a father would spend 10 years or more ruining his rapport with his son just to come off and protect his identity as an ex-CIA agent? My son's going to hate me for the rest of my life, but he'll never know that I work for the CIA. Come on. Target was built on a lie. Then it turns into a boring chase picture.
A boring and implausible chase picture as Matt Dillon races through the streets of Paris as if he knew every one-way sign and every stop sign and all the ins and outs of
Parisians
traffic.
don't even know it.
Never been in Europe before. So much for Target. Now let's take a look at some more major movies to make our 1985 Hall of Shame. One of them is Maxie, implausible, boring, with Glenn Close in a dual role as a San Francisco woman possessed by the ghost of a flapper.
Neither character she played was funny, and I hated Brewster's Millions, another film wasting the great comic talents of Richard Pryor, who never seems to play a character as funny as he really is.
The Man with One Red Shoe was an incomprehensible and unfunny remake of a mediocre French comedy.
And A View to a Kill, I hope this is the last James Bond film with Roger Moore, who is largely responsible for ruining what was once a great movie series. Next week, 4 new movies. They've got to be better than the ones we've just seen, I hope. We'll review Murphy's Romance next week, a story about a single mother played by Sally Field in love with an older man, James Garner. And we'll also review Revolution, starring Al Pacino and Nastassja Kinski, a story about the American Revolutionary War. That's next week, and until then, we'll see you at the movies.